Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. So recently, Beth from Books Nest did a video where she talked about her favourite fiction books, which are all about books. Books where the plot is very much influenced by books, by literature, by publishing. And since some of my favourite books include The Binding by Bridget Collins and The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, it was a video that I very much enjoyed, and I will link it down below for you to all watch. It also made me think about some of my favourite books about books, and so I've compiled a little list here of some non-fiction recommendations that are all about people who love books, who love reading, who love the publishing industry, who love libraries. It's just a great time. I do love a good book about why books are great. It's the best kind of confirmation bias. You're just there, sat reading, and your book is telling you about what a great thing it is that you're reading. It's like having a little cheerleader pepping you up and telling you to keep going, keep reading. I'd also love it if you could see this video as being a little bit of an incentive to support your local bookshops, particularly your independents. As far as I know, Independent Bookshop Week will be taking place between the 20th to the 27th of June this year, and I know that there are a lot of bookshops, especially independent bookshops, who are really struggling at the moment with lockdown. So any support that you can do to those independent branches would be absolutely fantastic. I'll be leaving some details down below about Independent Bookshop Week and what you can do to support. And so now onto these book lover books. The first book that I wanted to recommend to you today is The Bookshop Book by Jen Campbell. I'll obviously be linking down below Jen's YouTube channel, but I'm sure that you all watch her. In this book, Jen talks about different bookshops all over the world, from converted churches to book barges, and how all of these different bookshops have so many different stories about how they bring books to the public. The blurb on the dust jacket says that this is just a love letter to bookshops, and it is definitely that. There is so much love in this project that Jen did to talk about all of these different bookshops, and it is well worth a read. And I couldn't talk about the Bookshop Book without mentioning Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops, also by Jen Campbell. I've still not gotten round to more Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops. In this book, Jen Campbell reflects on all of the strange, bizarre things that people have asked her when she used to work as a bookseller at Ripping Yarns in London, which is a bookshop I have visited myself, and it was really lovely, and I think it's such a shame that it's closed now. This is just absolutely hysterical. There are so many entries in here where you're just like, why did that person ask that? Next we have Stop What You're Doing and Read This. This is a collection of essays by multiple different authors, including Zadie Smith, Jeanette Winterson. I believe I came across this book way back when. I think it was on Lena Norm's channel. This was the very first kind of book lover book that I ever came across. It was back in 2014 when I had just started getting back into reading, and this was just the motivation that I needed to keep on going and be like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, getting back into reading. This collection of essays just talks about so many different facets to do with the power of reading. For example, how books can affect our personalities and our beliefs and our behaviours, why we should be supporting libraries. The one thing that I will say about this book is that it is very much of its time. It was written in 2011. There is one essay in which an author kind of laments about the fact that ebooks are becoming so popular and that ebooks are just not the same as reading, and I feel like that is a conversation that has just been so well trodden. I think by now most of us should all know that just because you're reading an ebook and not a physical book does not mean that you are a lesser reader in any way. But aside from that, the rest of the collection is absolutely fantastic and really will just motivate you to keep on reading. Some more essays for you. We have Books versus Cigarettes by George Orwell. This is part of the Penguin Great Ideas. I believe it is number 57 in the Great Ideas series. This collection isn't just about books and reading, but I do believe the first 4 essays in here are about George Orwell's relationship to books. In these essays, George Orwell reflects on being a critic. He reflects on how much books cost and how much he spends on books each year. He talks about his memories of working in a second-hand bookshop. Obviously, it is very much of its time, but I think there's a lot of sentiments here that are applicable to today as well, and it's a nice little introduction to George Orwell's essays. Next we have The Unknown Unknown, Bookshops and the Delight of Not Getting What You Want by Mark Forsyth. Mark Forsyth is probably best known for his books The Horologicon and The Etymologicon, and my personal favourite, A Short History of Drunkenness. This is just a teeny tiny little pamphlet in which Mark Forsyth talks about just the delights of being in a bookshop and that moment of discovery when you find a book that you'd never heard of before and it just prompts you to engage more with a different author, with a different genre that maybe that you hadn't considered before, and how you just really do not get that from online shopping. He doesn't condemn online shopping in any way, but you just cannot mimic that same emotion of going into a bookshop and finding something that you'd never heard of before. The opportunity that bookshops give you to really read outside of your comfort zone. An algorithm just cannot provide that same experience. Like I say, it is just a teeny tiny little thing. I think it's about 20-25 pages, so it can take no time at all. Next we have Dear Fahrenheit 451 by Annie Spence. This is the one and only proof copy that I have on my shelves. Ooh. In which the author Annie Spence writes letters personal to each individual book that has made some sort of impact, whether good or bad, and talks about the lessons that each of those books had for her over her life of reading. It's a really, really lovely concept and I do highly recommend it. On a similar theme, we have Bookworm, a memoir of childhood reading by Lucy Mangan. In this book, Lucy Mangan talks about all of her childhood favourites, from Narnia to Wonderland to The Secret Garden to so many books that I'd never heard of before. I looked in the back and I was just shocked at how many books I had never heard of before. What I will say about this book is that some of the book entries in here are very, very specific to when Lucy Mangan grew up. Like I say, there were a lot of books in here that I never read as a child who grew up in the late 90s, early noughties, but still very, very engaging, very much worth a read. I think if you were, you know, the little child who would always take a book to a party and then would like try and find a little corner to go read, like me, then this is definitely going to be a book for you. And then finally we have The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Blythell. Sean actually owns the largest secondhand bookshop in Scotland, and this is exactly what it says on the tin. It is all of the trials and tribulations of being a bookseller, the day-to-day life of bookselling and all of the anecdotes that come with that. It is very much unromanticized. It's not like this quaint and lovely experience that I think a lot of people imagine of being a bookseller. It is very much the admittance that there are both moments of hilarity and moments of boredom that come from being a bookseller. It's very real, it's very funny. I highly recommend. I also thought I'd take a moment to talk about some of the books that I haven't read yet that I'm really keen to get to, and two of them are very much on the history side because it's me. I'm really keen to get to The Social Life of Books, Reading Together in 18th Century Home. As we know, I am a big fan of early modern history, and I'm always really interested in particularly the growth of literacy and print culture. And this book explores 18th century reading habits, and I believe in particular the kind of shift from reading aloud to reading solo and silently. It ticks a lot of history boxes for me, so I really want to get to it soon. I'm also really keen to get to The Written World, The Power of Stories to Shape People, History and Civilization by Martin Puchner? From Homer to The Tale of Genji to Don Quixote to Harry Potter, it just highlights the power of books and a good story to shape world history, and I'm really, really keen to get to it. And then finally we have Reading the World, Confessions of a Literary Explorer by Anne Morgan. Anne Morgan did a project in which she tried to read one book from every country in the world, and she documented her experiences. I remember Sophie from Portal in the Pages took up this project, I think it was last year, and so this has been on my radar since then, and I think it's always such a great thing to do, to read diversely from different corners of the world, from as many countries as you can, to really broaden your knowledge and your experience. So once again, very keen to get to this one and to read about her experiences of reading around the world. So that's everything for today. I'd love to hear some of your recommendations down in the comments for book lover books. Are there any books, both fiction and non-fiction, that talk about the love of books and reading that you'd really recommend? Do leave me a comment down below to tell me about them, and just anything else that you want to discuss. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks, bye.